In the last 3 years, though, how have you looked at this whole evolution of China AI versus the U.S.? And what are sort of the advantages and challenges for China AI?
Yeah, so firstly, I disagree on the prospects of US AI.
Oh, US AI.
Because,
okay.
Yes, you look at OpenAI, it's making 12 billion, spending 40 billion, looks like a bad balance sheet. But most of that 40 billion is spent for future revenues. And if you believe there 2x, 3x, 5x growth for the next 3 years, it's going to justify that valuation at some point. The bubble is merely that it's gotten ahead of itself, not the likelihood of growth in the future. Okay, not saying it's worth its price,
right,
but there's absolute substance under the foam. Now back to the China AI, the fundamental difference is actually closed source versus open source.
Yes.
The US model is necessarily propelled by this ambition and dream of one company reaching AGI first and squashing everyone, winner take all worth trillions of dollars. That's what OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and others are betting on. And it's like a genius kid who thinks he or she will win the Nobel Prize. The China approach is, hey, let's all work together and share, we compete, but let's open source our models. So A learns from B, B learns from C. It's more like a study group of smart kids, maybe not genius kids.
But is the open source a reason why a lot of these Chinese AI startups cannot monetize?
Well, I think there's a common belief in US and China. AI is the most important technological revolution ever. There is a belief that this monetization will happen.
Okay.
It's happening first in the US, and it will happen later in China. So there is a bet that if all of China kind of pseudo collaborates through open source, then builds a great platform, then everyone can benefit because the knowledge of the platform. Or if one company comes out ahead, there's a chance to leap ahead and be the next great company as well. So there's tremendous optimism that AI is changing the world, and these models, closed source approach is a belief one company will squash everyone else. Open source is, hey, let's share for now and we'll see what happens.
Has the open source model in some ways discouraged competition, because I simply have to look across the classroom and see who has the best answer and simply build on that classmate?
Well, that is the business of my company, 01.ai.
Okay.
We've pivoted ourselves to build on open source. Whoever has the best model will use it. If it's DeepSeek or Qwen, we are agnostic. So we're in a position not so dissimilar from NVIDIA. Obviously, NVIDIA is much better, but they don't care who wins, and we don't care either. We only care that open source moves forward, and its benefits are that open source is free. It's much lower cost when it's basically free, and we can build on it. It's ours. We take it. We do whatever we want. And also enterprises, they can take the model in-house, run everything in-house. If they have secret data they don't want to send to the cloud, well, they don't have to.
Right, but someone needs to pay for the innovation, though. Who you know, this, like, I'll just take the OpenAI example, but you know, there's clearly a difference in the Chinese context, where you have capex of $1 trillion, and people are trying to figure out how they're going to pay for that. And then people, to your point, longer term will then have to worry about how they then make that back. In China's case, where you don't have to pay for it, where it's open source, how is the innovation getting funded, and how do you justify to those asset allocators that they will get a return for their investment?
Well, I actually like the Chinese model better. While the likes of Alibaba, ByteDance, Baidu, they're paying a lot of money. They're willing to subsidize because it's fundamental to their core business, whether it's e-commerce or search or social. And I think they're smart business people. They'll do the balancing. They're not spending a tiny fraction for the OpenAI spending.
Right.
Now, the OpenAI spending is a big bet, big return. It's betting that it will win. Whereas I think Alibaba, Baidu, Tencent, ByteDance if they're spending more prudently, which they are, they will be able to look at the whole balance sheet and deliver a reasonable result. We don't see any of these people reporting huge losses.
Right.
So I think the Chinese model is more prudent for a financial investor. The U.S. is a winner-take-all. So you pick your winner. If you win big.
Yeah.
If you lose big.
How do you see it, though, play out in China, whether you have the big AI giants like Alibaba, like ByteDance, who have the deep pockets to continue on with this sort of AI war in China? How do they stack up against some of these startups like a Minimax or a Moonshot?
Well, I admire the courage of the smaller companies who choose to compete. I feel that it's more prudent for a smaller company to build either applications or either enterprise or consumer and betting on the fundamental foundation models of the big companies, because I don't think it's very likely that any startup can raise money the way OpenAI does, or even 1/10 of OpenAI. And with that, with less money, it is going to be difficult. The talents are obviously very good in the Chinese startups as well as the large companies, but the lack of spend and the lack of huge number of talent and talent density makes it an uphill struggle for the startups that try to do that.
The DeepSeek moment in, well, let's call it two moments, right? Because the January moment this year was where it became public to the world. Although it was this time last year where people had started to already talk about DeepSeek. And then people are now looking for what's the next one. You're connected and well connected into the industry. What innovations are taking place right now? What should we be prepared for going into next year?
Well, I think in terms of deep fundamental foundation models, U.S. is ahead, but China is very rapidly figuring out the great things U.S. is doing, plus a few of its own good things, to basically trail by 3 to 6 months. I've been saying this for a year and a half, and it still remains the case. So I don't think there's going to be a huge breakout, change the world technology in China. That's not likely. What is more likely is there may be great consumer apps. And what's even much more likely is that Chinese hardware. There's a company called Plod. It is basically an ambient AI that listens all the time and gives you summaries of all the meetings and tells you what to do and gives you reminders. And that's just the beginning.
Right.
That is so much cheaper to build in China. And it's iterated much faster and it's getting smaller. And I think the Chinese VCs are hesitant to invest in large language models for the reasons we discussed. But they are going all out, including my own Sci Innovation Ventures, on betting on hardware. When people talk hardware, people think, oh, it's embodied robotics and it's humanoid robots. But those are also a bit overpriced. It's much more prudent to invest in small devices, because when AI revolution moves forward at the next step, we will see that the best device on which to use AI is not the phone. Whether it is a glasses or watch or wristband or a little necklace or almost invisible are all possible, because AI first means it's always on, always listening, always thinking, and it's your external hard drive that's smart and remembers everything you see and did. I know you're going to talk about privacy, but I know that's a separate discussion.
It gets a bit creepy.
I might be listening to you right now.
Oh my goodness. There's a lot of talk, this hot trend about AI agents. Can you tell us a bit more, what's all the buzz around it, and how long before it becomes pretty mainstream, you think, when it comes to enterprise?
It's real already, but it's not yet mainstream. An agent is built on the large language model. The large language model is the brain, and there may be multiple large language models, each doing special things, but the two most important things wraps around it. One is memory. It knows who you are, what you did, who's your company, what your policies are. So it's relevant to what you do, as opposed to a general chatbot. But the other even bigger thing is that it executes tasks. So instead of giving you a travel itinerary, it gets the travel booked, your airline, your hotel. Instead of suggesting what's the strategy, it starts executing. Your ads are placed as opposed to suggesting what ads you might do.